Knock, knock.
Hello everybody, it is me, and if you're wondering where I've been, well, I'm gonna put in the description of this video an explanation to where I've been. But anyways, today we are reviewing the McFarlane Toys Spawn Kickstarter Classic version. So, if you're wondering what this figure is, well, it's a Kickstarter created by Todd McFarlane, the man who made Spawn, designed Venom, and created McFarlane Toys, which is the company that makes the DC figures right now, which don't really look that good and are kind of bad sometimes, but that doesn't matter. So, anyways, this Kickstarter was created around a year ago, and the main purpose of it was so that people could get a good classic Spawn figure, since I guess Todd McFarlane couldn't sell it in retail stores since apparently they wouldn't sell Spawn products, which I kind of understand since Spawn is irrelevant now. Well, not irrelevant, he was in Mortal Kombat 11, but he was not as popular as he used to be. And so he made a Kickstarter, and if enough people pledge and reach the goal, the figures would be made. And it was surprisingly easily, I think the goal was met in 12 minutes, which is really damn impressive. But yeah, there are 3 versions of this figure that I believe. There is the classic version, which I got, the modern version, and the prototype version. And it had like a black and white color scheme, but I really didn't care for that. And there was a way to get all 3 of those figures, but it was really expensive, and I just wanted one version. And ever since I got this Kickstarter, I always had mixed feelings about it. I still think it's a little ridiculous how we needed a Kickstarter for us to get Spawn figures, even though Todd McFarlane was able to make a Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn figure. And as the news kept on coming about the things that are going to happen to this figure, I got really mad at some, like the fact he was not going to create any waist articulation. The kit was going to be this hard plastic material, and I just, I slowly began to lose interest and forgot about the figure sometimes, which is what happened on Thursday when the figure arrived, and I was in shock, I actually didn't believe that it was here this early. And I'm showing off the unboxing right now because it's such a process right now. There are 2 boxes in one already. I think it's a little excessive, but the boxes do look nice. And here you can see it comes with the original Spawn comic, which I think is actually pretty cool. I actually really want to read that comics, but if I have time. And here we can see the original toys that came with the original Spawn figure. Man, I never guessed Spawn was really popular in the 90s. He even had his own line of action figures. Compare that to today where it's you don't get anything Spawn related at all. Mortal Kombat 11 was the closest thing we got is Spawn being relevant again. And then this toy came along with, I should really say toys, an action figure. And yeah, once again, this is it was honestly a pain to open up the packaging of this figure since there was layer upon layer of plastic and wrapping, and honestly it got kind of ridiculous sometimes, just me opening the figure, then I see oh look, another piece of plastic on this figure. But here you can see a part of the packaging that's almost open, and there's the figure. And then I had to get scissors to cut those little stupid plastic pieces to hold your action figures in place in the packaging. I've always hated those. I think those are always stupid and annoying. They should just use rubber bands, so those are easier to cut and dispose. But nah, they pick these hard pieces of plastic that I hate. But yeah, once I got that up, I finally got the majority of the figure in my hands now. But there's still some more on the figure, and that's a little ridiculous. And then now we can finally look at the figure. When it comes to the look of the figure, it looks really good. McFarlane Toys always knows how to make a figure look good. There are a lot of nice pieces of detail, such as the sculpt on the cape, and if you look closely at Spawn's face, you can see his skull on the face, which looks really cool, and that shows a nice admiration of detail. So the figure looks great, but playing with it, however, it's not really that good. It's kind of a nightmare. As you can clearly see from this design, there are a lot of spikes on this figure. So when you actually play with the figure, you're gonna touch and feel a lot of those spikes. And although I wouldn't say it's bad, it's definitely distracting. You're playing with the figure and you see you feel the spike touching you, And I feel like it can make you bleed a little bit. I haven't bled from it yet, but if you have enough force, I feel like it could definitely make you bleed. Man, Todd wasn't joking when he said this figure was not made for kids. Speaking of which, did I forget to mention this video is not made towards kids? Because I know there are kids still watching my videos, and in that case, get out. Anyways, another problem with this figure is that it is a victim of a pre-pose. Look at the white logo on his chest. Notice how like the white parts are slanted and crooked? That's because the prototype of this figure had that exact same design, but that it was okay because it was like in this pre-pose, or like it was like leaning forward a little bit. But on this, the figure, it looks ridiculous because it's not supposed to be in that pose. Like, look at the head. The head has this exact same issue because they try to make it look straight and have articulation. So they try to add joints on a statue basically, which looks kind of stupid. And this neck right here is an example because one side has more plastic than the other, which that just looks bad. Look at the showing of articulation here. You can clearly tell they added joints to the figure when it was in a pre-pose, meaning that it's only going to look good in one pose because it was made to be in that pose. This hurts the figure even more because of the fact that there's barely any waist articulation. The torso is just one giant block of plastic that's on a rubber overlay, and there is barely any movement at all. This reminds me a lot of the Doctor Doom figure, but with that figure it was okay because the torso was sculpted to be in a neutral position, so it looked good regardless if you had it crunched or not, and you still got a good amount of mobility with the figure. You can't really say the same thing for the Spawn figure because of the fact there's barely any mobility at all. What makes this weirder is that there is no other McFarlane toy that has this problem. Look at this Sub-Zero figure. It was sculpted to be in a neutral position, making it look good in any pose you want it to be in. However, the biggest problem with this figure is the cape. The cape ruins any fun you could have with this figure. It constantly gets in your way and just feels so unpleasant to play with. And they're trying to act smart by giving it hinge joints, even though it does nothing at all. It just flops around and makes the cape look ugly sometimes, so the cape is just what ruins this figure the most. Compare this to a Marvel Legends cape where the material on the cape is this nice soft pliable material. Yeah, it's not perfect, but at least it makes the figure way easier to play with, and you can still take off the cape. You cannot take off the cape on the Spawn figure unless you add heat to it. Also, some parts of the cape are longer than the entirety of the figure, so when you try to stand it, the first thing that's going to touch the ground is the cape, which means that the figure's feet are never really going to touch the ground unless you have it leaning a little bit. That is just bad design. And of course, the cape limits some parts of articulation on the figure. Speaking of articulation, there is a ball joint around the neck allowing with some pretty good motion. The neck is able to look this far up, and with the ball joint on the head, you can make the figure look up a little bit more, and with both joints combined, the figure looks this far down. Due to the cape, the arms can only move this far up and this far forward. Arms have a hinge and swivel joint moving around at 90 degrees. All the hands have hinge joints, but the clawed hands seem to have the best amount of range. It can move this far up and this far down. Once again with the torso, you can only move this far forward, but it does have some pretty good side-to-side motion, moving this far to the side and this far to the other side. The legs have really good range, moving this far up and this far forward. As for swivels, the right thigh has a lower swivel, and both calves have a swivel as well. And there's somewhat of an upper thigh swivel on the figure, but it's limited due to the crotch. Double jointed knees that can bend about this much. The ankles can move this far down and this far up, and they also have a pivot as well. And you can change the direction in which the ankles move due to the ball hinge joint that the ankles have. And last but not least, there is also toe articulation. Like how I said earlier, both sides of the cape have a hinge joint allowing it to go up and down, even though it looks awful. Articulation on this guy is alright, but it's nothing compared to an SH Figuarts figure or even a Marvel Legend. But at least the accessories are nice. For hands, we get these cool clawed, spreaded out hands. Then you get some gripping hands, and these are made to hold the gun and the sword. And it's pretty easy to put these accessories onto the hands, and Spawn holds them really nicely. And yeah, I gotta admit, he looks awesome with these weapons. Then you get this necroplasm dagger. It looks pretty cool, and you put this into one of Spawn's gripping hands. You also get some fisted hands that have a hole in them. and these hands are made to hold the necroplasm effect. This weapon seems to be made for the right hand to hold since it does a better job holding it, but you can put it on both hands. As for additional heads, you get this awesome screaming head. It looks pretty cool, but I do have some problems with it though. The neck is always sculpted to be extending forward so he looks hunched, and the head is always looking up a little bit, which looks ridiculous sometimes. You also get this stand for the figure. It does its job. Anyways, here are some size comparisons. Here he is next to the McFarlane toy Sub-Zero and SH Figuarts Goku. Here he is next to the Wicked Cool Toys Master Chief and Star Wars Black Series Darth Vader. And here he is next to some Marvel Legends. So apparently Spawn's canon height is 6'11", and this figure is around 7 inches. So I guess you can mix and match with other 6-inch figures. So, in conclusion, this figure is... alright. There are a lot of problems that hold this figure back. The articulation is okay, the cape is complete garbage, and the Prepose stuff is awful. But the biggest problem with this figure is that it doesn't feel justified to be a Kickstarter. While stuff like the box and comic book are pretty cool, I feel like Todd didn't have to include that stuff for him to satisfy his fans. If he just made a good Spawn figure with great articulation and great accessories, he'll be able to satisfy a lot more people than he has right now. Say what you will about the Haslab Sentinel, but that figure is honestly warranted for being a Kickstarter, since it's so big and you get so much awesome stuff with the figure. It honestly feels worth the price. Obviously it's expensive, but it feels worth it. This figure on the other hand, it feels like I'm paying scalper price for it. If you have the Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn, you're not missing much. But remember, this is all in my opinion. If you like the figure, that's fine. Obviously you can't get this figure now since it was a Kickstarter, but there's always a second market and... yeah, I know you're screwed. But anyways, that concludes this review. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below and about this new format. Anyways guys, feel free to like and subscribe, I'll always appreciate it. And stay safe you guys, there's a lot of stuff going on in this world. I'll see you guys next time. And here's the cat reading my review. Yeah, he just loves to sit right there. What? Get out. Get out. You're reading my review.